right, gang. Welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. I am your host, Mike Williver, your favorite former Fed. With us today in this very special edition of the Active Self-Protection Podcast are two people just old enough to remember when there was a very special episode of this or that TV show back in the 80s. And it was like John was forced to smoke a cigarette by his friends and then gets in trouble with his parents. On this special episode, we have the owner and founder of Active Self-Protection, John Correa, and our Chief Executive Officer, not Mrs. ASP, Stephanie Widener. Stephanie, how are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's nice to see your face. And again, I apologize to the audience. They can't see either of your super pretty faces, but hopefully sometime next year we'll go video and they'll be able to see all of our beautiful guests. John, how are you, sir?
Amazing. I'm good, man. It amazes me in this day and age how many people will comment asking if Stephanie is my wife when we have different last names and my wife has been on the channel and Stephanie's husband is on the channel. And we've said, no, we're not spouses. I mean, we're both married, just not to each other. And yeah, it's an odd and interesting thing. I think people just don't get it that like, wait a minute. There's a John, and then there's somebody else there who is the CEO, but that's a woman. Is that okay? Newsflash.
And they like each other. They have fun. Yeah. They like each other. They work well together and have a healthy relationship. Obviously, they're sleeping together and married. That's the
folks,
only explanation.
We like to say around here that shenanigans are the order of the day with Active Self-Protection, but not that kind of shenanigans. Just to be clear, we're all happily married to our actual spouses. So.
That's right.
Guys, I asked you to come on and just to talk about the channel, about the company, about the conference, about the instructor development class, all the things we got going on, not the least of which is this wildly successful podcast hosted by me. John, talk to me about the last year and the growth you've seen in Active Self-Protection and what that means to you.
2021 in many ways is just an incredible year for Active Self-Protection. I think that I can't even start really. We cracked 2.5 million subscribers on the big channel, which is a big deal. That's pretty huge. 1.2 billion lifetime channel views. And I don't really honestly have a frame of reference for that, quite frankly. You think about 1.2 billion times somebody has learned a lesson from Active Self-Protection. That's it's a statistic I can't even hardly put into a frame. So the big channel has been incredible. Honestly, the second channel has performed incredibly admirably, almost doubled in the last year. And Active Self-Protection Extra has become a huge labor of love. I think the big thing in 2021 has been the adventures, the Chronicles of the Range Monkey have been really instrumental in growing. That's Stephanie's youngest daughter, Natalie, who is the Range Monkey. And she has done incredible. And the amount we've been able to put out on the two channels in terms of content, we've actually raised now some of the big things on the channel. We brought our favorite former Fed on for her badge cams as well. So Mike coming on the badge cams has been, I think, instrumental. I think it's made them a lot better because that voice of experience speaks sometimes and in some ways and with some nuance that I didn't have. We also brought Stephanie on for one video of main video a week in 2021. And I think that's been very successful. Again, she has a perspective, a voice, an insight into things in a way that I don't with her own expertise. And so those two things on the big channel have been huge. We're now up on both channels combined. Pardon me while I take a breath and go. We put out 19 pieces of content between the two YouTube channels a week. Unique, new video content every single week. Plus, then I suppose, now this isn't my content, this is our content together with the new episode of the podcast coming out every week. We are now at 20 unique pieces of content in the ASP universe every single week. So the channels are killing it, man.
If lifetime views were people, we'd be China.
We'd be India, bro.
Oh boy. You were talking a minute ago about Stephanie and her being on the main channel. And, you know, we have full-time comment moderators around here. And some of the comments, when you put a female on the screen, are just unbelievable. And they're people we don't really care if they stop watching our videos because we don't need that kind of noise around here. But just the sort of...
Please stop watching.
Oh, yeah, she's a girl and girl this and girl that. I got to say this, and this is kind of an aside, but since joining the company, going to the conference, learning, being taught by Stephanie and other female instructors, I thought I had a fair idea of what it's like to be a woman walking around, or like what that must be like. I had no idea. I had no clue. Going to her class, just about women's safety and self-protection. I think men just can't possibly wrap their mind around what it's like to walk around in a woman's body all day and be looked at and remarked at and be creeped upon at a bar and all this sort of thing. It's a totally different experience for a woman in self-defense.
Yeah, we had an interesting moment. You were in the class when we were talking about that and how to, kind of handle interactions with strangers when they seem to be wanting to interact with you. And a couple of the men in that class had some ideas and advice. And one of those was to just smile and say hello, like one man would do to another. And every woman in the class was immediately like, you are absolutely kidding, right? Do you have any idea what would happen if I start smiling and saying hello to every guy I pass on the street? It's not... like you say, it's a little bit different world and we have to navigate a little bit differently. And that adds, in some ways, the principles of violence are the principles of violence. And you don't get away from those just because you're a female, but the day-to-day moving about the world and the threats that you face and your strengths or skills in navigating them might have some different nuances, different subtleties, different ways of looking at it and approaching it. That I think that's one of the things I love so much about our company is we've got a huge female presence. It's not just me. We're darn near half female, which I think lends a tremendous depth and width of experience and perspective that so many other companies and places don't have.
100% agreed. I remember sitting in that class and he said, just say hi, just smile and say hello, which is fine if you're a man. It's perfectly acceptable, with a confident, chest out. Hey, how are you? For a lot of men, a woman smiling and saying hello is like, hey, I want your body. Let's go do this. I'm interested in you. I'm all about this. And it's just not. So that dovetails nicely into the national conference. Now, Stephanie, I know you had a lot to do with getting that put together behind the scenes.
Okay. Whoa. Time out. No. Stop that right now. Because Stephanie did not have a lot to do with putting the conference together. Stephanie is the ASP National Conference.
Right.
She is every bit the center of the conference. We just stick my face on it because people know me on YouTube.
Fair enough.
You're so pretty.
Yeah, well, you're both very pretty, as we've established. I think I was trying to be modest on her behalf. I don't know the behind the scenes. I have no clue what goes into preparing it. And there's so many moving parts. And I say you and others like Shannon just bust your backside getting that ready. So talk to us about what it takes to get that conference together every year.
I would love to, because some of it is very comical. We'll get people approaching John and asking him different questions about the conference, or how do I get to do this, or how do I get to teach there? And and this isn't against John. He's got 19 pieces of content he has to put out every week, but he doesn't have anything to do with or know what's going on with the conference. So to me, it's almost comical that there's this assumption that that's where they need to go and that's who they need to get to know to get involved. On the other hand, there is a huge...
I literally asked Stephanie, can I teach this, and this year, pretty please? Right. And she goes, I don't know. I'll let you know later what you can teach.
Yeah. I will tell you what you can teach. Wherever I have holes, you're filling them in, friend. But the other side of that is there actually is a really extensive volunteer group that I could not, particularly this last year, I couldn't have done it without Jesse and Katie Johnson, Carrie Dudenhofer, who's part of ASP staff, Shannon Middlebrook, Shelley Hill, also part of ASP staff. They are putting in a tremendous amount of hours, and they have gifts in ways that I just don't have them. So they took what I was doing and I think really elevated it to another level, brought another level of organization, another level of support for I just sent the instructors out and I was like, here, teach this. I'll be busy somewhere else. And like Jesse and Katie came in and were like, no, we've got to care for these instructors. We have to support them and help them, yell at them to drink water. And they do a fantastic job down just running the ranges. But yeah, the conference is it's just one of my biggest passions. I could talk about it forever. But as you know, throughout the entire company of ASP, the idea of foster care, foster teens, adoption, it just runs deep through all of us and through so many families. So when we came across this place called the Flint Hills Foster Teen Camps, and we found a way that we could do some really cool things and teach some really cool people and benefit all of it. It's 100% a fundraiser for this Flint Hills Foster Teen Camps. It just was almost meant to be. And every year, I swear I just witness miracles there, just miraculous, incredible, joyful things. Even while I feel like it's one of the most difficult weekends of my life, it's also one of the absolutely most joyous ones too.
I think it's unique as well because it, like Stephanie said, it's 100% a fundraiser for this teen camp. And so it's unique in that perspective. And that doesn't mean we're amazing or whatever. It's just the Lord just put that on my heart that it's not wrong for a company that puts on a conference like this to profit from that. It's not wrong. That's not wrong at all. And I would have no problem with that, but that's just not how we've arranged this. So the conference literally, I think Shannon gave me the final number. I think the conference this last year out of ASP's pocket was somewhere right around $10,000 to put everything on and get the staff there and do those things. And all the instructors donate their time. They get their expenses reimbursed, the direct travel expenses, and that's it. And ASP doesn't make a penny. And the companies that give as sponsors, that goes to the camp. Everything goes to the camp. And so it's amazing to me that in this next year, 150 kids will get to go to the Flint Hills Foster Teen Camp and have a hope at reclaiming life after being a teenager in the foster system in a way that those kids slip through the cracks because they're not cracks, they're giant gaping holes. Right. And so it's an incredible opportunity that we get to do there.
I was fortunate enough to get to go this year as a staff member. I'm not sure I did very much. It was very productive, but I was able to kind of get a glimpse behind the scenes at how the sausage is made and see Stephanie running around pulling her hair out and everyone else running around pulling their hair out behind the scenes thinking, oh, this is going terribly. This is a Titanic. This is the Hindenburg. Everything's going down in flames. And then I walk out into a class or onto a range and I see a awesome class going on. Everyone's just enjoying themselves, learning all they could possibly learn about whatever it is the classes they're in, whether it's pepper spray, whether it's rear dot pistol shooting, or whether it's Stephanie's class on women's safety in public, whatever it is. Everyone there, nobody there got any hint of all the stuff going on behind the scenes, but I did, and I saw what you and the others were doing, and I want to say I appreciate you. How much did we raise this year? Not to toot our own horn, but I think it's important that people know when they go out to this thing and they put their hard-earned money down for this training, it was a pretty big amount, the teen camp. I was there for the auction. I saw how excited Mike and Lisa were when the dollar amount just kept going up and up and up. And our sponsors, HK and Palm and so many others just going over and above to donate to. People were buying back stuff that they'd already, or what's the word I'm looking for? They were
re-auctioning.
Yeah, re-auction, exactly. They let it ride. Somebody dropped $1,000 on an item that's worth maybe $500, and then they give it right back for someone else to auction. It was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So how much money did we raise approximately?
We raise it in a couple of different ways. So we have it as people register to go to the conference, 100% of their tuition goes to that.
You don't actually even give ASP a penny.
Yeah.
You go and you make a donation for a week of summer camp for a child to the Flint Hills Foster Teen Camp. And when you make a week's donation, then we give you for free a seat at the conference.
And then we have the auction that you were talking about. We have sponsors, business partners that we have that donate money to it to help cover expenses. Leftovers go with that. We sell merchandise that, again, 100% goes to the camp. The last number I had was at $98,000. And I'm thinking with the merchandise, it may have gotten right up to $100,000.
That's outstanding. It's such a worthy cause. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, should I go to the ASP National Conference this year? The answer is yes. You absolutely should. Stephanie got done with that conference the last day of the conference and started next year's conference that same day, not even the next day, getting ready for that one. So appreciate all the behind the scenes work that gets done that no one ever sees. And yeah, if you're thinking about going, folks, go. It is some outstanding training. And the value for money, John, is unbelievable.
Well, it is. We realize that we say, wait, 3 solid days of training with national level instructors in 2 and 4 hour blocks. I mean, you've got guys there like AJ Zito, you've got Adam Winch there, Warren Wilson teaching. You've got just really incredible instructors. Chris Seipert was there leading classes. I'm going to miss 100.
John Correa,
Paul Carlson, Carrie Dudenhofer, Neil Widener, Samuel Middlebrook, Stephanie Widener. I mean, just incredible national level folks. and Dave Laird was there teaching. We had
Brian and Shelley.
Brian Hill, for gracious sakes, Brian Hill. To get to take those classes, those are typically $250 to $300 a day for those level of instructors. So you get to go for $200 a day, plus you get to do the thing. And I've been to many conference style firearms training. I've been to a lot of firearms training, and a lot of it is great. And I'm not trying to compete with anyone else with the ASP National Conference, and we're not trying to be the next X or Y. Because quite frankly, the Active Self-Protection National Conference is unique. And what I hear again and again, and we get it every year, is people said, John, I thought I was coming to a firearms training conference, and instead it changed my life. And that tends to happen some on the range because of the caliber of instructors and their focus on making you a better person and helping you see whether it's a trigger pull or your defensive loadout or the way you see an issue through the lens of your humanity, or it's sitting around at the breakfast table. Or if you decide to come, we do a devotion in the morning for those who want to. We sit and do a little Bible study and prayer time. Had a worship service on Saturday night after the auction, which was incredible. People sit around the fire afterwards till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not joking. 4 a.m. is not uncommon. Not me. I party like I'm on Social Security and I'm in bed by 9:45. But people sit around the campfire and have life-changing relationships show up there. And so just it's a unique event. And we literally center our year around it. It's basically, I joke that the national conference is like our Jerusalem. All roads lead to the national conference, and everything happens around that.
Yeah, there were multiple times this year that I was literally driven to my knees in gratitude and awe about what I was seeing and hearing that was happening in people's lives. I can't count the number of times people just came up afterwards and they didn't even have words for me. They would just have tears and hugs, and that was it. And I'm like, well, something happened. I don't know what it is, but that's pretty to be able to have a part of something that touches another human being like that, and to just humbling. Like I said, just would drive you to your knees. Even by the end, I was like, I don't think I can take, and like my heart cannot take any more good news. It is just about breaking. It's overflowing. And that is, that's why I say it's my favorite weekend of the year. And the training, I'm super proud of the training. A lot of people aren't going initially for that fellowship and for those relationships. They're going for the training, and that on its own feat I'm very proud of that. The instructors that we put out there, the way they interact with and bless the students and teach the students that come there. It's incredible on its own. And then when you add everything else, it's a great weekend. I'm so grateful to be part of it.
And in 2022, it's going to be even better. We're already, I say that every year has been better than the last. And this year, we are adding in another live fire range. Mike is building a 4th live fire range. So we're going to have 4 classes going at once. Instead of 3, we're looking at potentially adding some classroom space so that we have ability for more students to come. For the classroom portions, we are already talking about having an introduction to long-range precision shooting, which has never been done there before. Potentially, if I can convince Stephanie to let us do it, we're going to have some low-light training in there. And look at she's rolling her eyes at me.
No, Paul's already working on me. If we can figure out a way, I think we can figure out a way to do it in an outstanding way and in a safe way. One of the things that we do that I love about the conference is we tend to get a lot of I hate to say inexperienced, but like newer students that haven't gone to classes before that want to learn, and they trust us with that experience. Again, another humbling thing. And they're standing right alongside someone that, training is their life, and they do it all the time. And the instructors are coming up and saying, how do I get in this class? And that was something that was totally new for these newer students to say, here I took a class from Chris Eipert. And then the next class, I was standing next to him as a student where he was learning and soaking everything in. And that was really eye-opening to them to see these instructors that are really dedicated to being students themselves, which is, of course, one of the reasons that we love having them. They're fantastic at what they do because they're dedicated to continually learning.
A couple of things I noticed while I was there. I had the unique opportunity to kind of wander around and go into and out of classes and observe. I noticed time and again, you could watch an AI would walk over to a student and go, have you thought about trying it this way? And there's no ego. There is zero ego from these instructors. There's zero ego from any of them. And the students, either they walk into this from a place of no ego and just wanted to genuinely learn, or the environment is such that that's just how it is. You know, nobody is puffing their chest out and nobody's touting their credentials. Everyone's there to learn from each other. And it's a really unique environment. And I think for me, what I came away with was I didn't see one person that I would walk away from at a gun store, be like, oh, you know, there was none of that. There was no FUD. There was just none of it. And anyone who, if anyone did kind of pop their head up and skyline themselves as being a little like that, it didn't last more than 2 seconds. That was done. It was done with right off the bat. So a phenomenal learning environment. That takes me to my next topic, which is the Active Self-Protection Instructor Cohort, of which I was a member, Cohort 3. And I can't express to you guys, again, you go to the national conference expecting, oh, I'll take some shooting classes and maybe I'll drink a beer and have a burrito and go home and everything will be good. And you leave there and your life has changed. Multiply that times 1,000 during the instructor cohort. If you are an instructor now and you want to get better, you want to get better at teaching other adults pretty much anything, but also firearms, I can't stress enough how amazing this is. And Samuel Middlebrook and Carrie Dudenhofer, and I'm sure others, have contributed to making this a remarkable success. There's guys that I started with in there that were military and super hardcore macho, you know, don't get me in my feels. And they finished this class as better instructors. And some have told me offline, better people. I cannot recommend this class enough. John, talk to us about the instructor cohort. You go out for the in-person every year and you instruct along with, Neil and Steph and Samuel and Carrie and others. Talk to us about what that program means to you and to the company.
Well, I think we started it for a reason, and I brought Samuel in to run it. Stephanie and I talked about it. And Neil, I'd say Neil and Stephanie and I are kind of the C-suite at Active Self-Protection. And we talked about it, and we've taken a ton of instructor level classes, and my background's in education. And I felt like there was a part of the market we could serve, and that what wasn't getting served in the firearms industry, which was the education principles to put that into firearms instruction, and to not only add that. So I taught college for 9 years, and I taught graduate school for 5, and I was a vocational pastor for 14. And so education is kind of my background. And these instructors would come in and they wouldn't know things like curriculum design, and they wouldn't know things like assessment. And you ask them, what's this drill about? What is a design test? And how will I know if I've seen statistically significant improvement? And all those words sounded to a lot of people like a threat. Like, well, what are you talking about? Of course. I mean, if you can do that thing, then you're good. Compared to whom? And how do I know a student has improved? And what are they working on with that? And so we started the instructor certification to teach firearms instructors how to teach adults. So adult learning theory, classroom management, including range management, drill design, curriculum design, human learning, and adult learning principles, power dynamics in instructor and student relationships, and how to be very cautious of that. I think, especially in the firearms industry, especially men in the firearms industry, in the instructor world, don't understand the power dynamics that are at play there, and it can really hurt them in a bad way. So that's what we initially thought. And okay, so I have a master's degree and half a doctorate. And I thought, a lot of times what we do is we bring people in for 2 days, 3 days, or if we really want to ask a lot of them, 5 days of training. And unless we're in professional law enforcement, right? Because a cop can go, hey, I'm going to get paid for the next couple of weeks to go out here. But in the law enforcement world, to say, hey, I want you to take 2 weeks off work and come to this 80-hour class, forget it, right? It's not happening. People can't do that. So we designed it as an in-person a longitudinal study. So it's 6 months worth of work, but we'll only do 1 weekend in person. And other than that, it's online, WebEx, at home work on you. We have them read 5 books. None of those books are about shooting directly. Although it's really funny. Everybody at the end goes, this book is 100% about shooting. when you have them read Daniel Coyle's, yeah, there it is, What the Best College Teachers Do, right? Ken Bain, fantastic book. And of course, everybody goes, John, where'd that book come from? I'll tell you where it came from. It came from when I was trying to learn how to be a college professor and how to be the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage. And that book changed the way that I approach the teaching task. And so as a guide to students. So anyways, we put that together. And when I asked Samuel if he would lead it, because I couldn't, Stephanie looked me in the eyes and was like, John, you cannot run this program. You don't have time. If you're going to do this stuff, somebody else has to lead it. And I'm like, but my baby, and I love this. And there's a million things like that, right? One of my big faults is I look at somebody doing something and go, I can do that better. And then I just decide to go do it. And so then I see somebody doing something, nope, I'm going to do it that better than they do it. And it's not because I feel like I'm amazing or like the best ever, but I just look at it and go, no, students deserve to have that done better. So I go do it. Anyways, as a teacher and lover of people, quite frankly, I could not do it better than Samuel Middlebrook. As a lover of people and one who actually walks with folks, shepherds them, disciples them in the true sense of the word. I'm not talking about necessarily proselytizing. I'm talking about discipling. There's nobody like him. And he has found his faithful and incredible sidekick in Carrie Dudenhofer, Carrie Dudenhofer is a golden retriever in human form. She's mm-hmm. like, she's those animals that a wizard came and went, boop, you're now a person, because she's really a golden retriever and one of the most encouraging people I've ever met in my life. So those two walking students through this curriculum to then think about how they present themselves and who they are and help students be the best they are in their journey has been really incredible. We finished our third cohort this year. And we start cohort 4 first week of January, and that cohort's full, which is incredible to me. So now I think, Stephanie, am I right? I think graduated 50 graduates in 3 cohorts. Is that the correct number?
That's got to be close. I'd have to look up the exact number, but that's going to be close.
It's right in it. So I think 50 might be high 40s instead. I'd have to look. So starting our 4th cohort, we got a 5th one that's going to start later in the year in 2022. And it's a passion project for me. It's another one that, quite frankly, I don't look at the balance sheet on, because if I did, I'd stop doing it. But it's worth it to invest in the future of the industry.
You mentioned Carrie Dudenhofer. Sam got very, very, very ill this year with, it doesn't matter. He got very, very ill. And it was bad. It was touch and go. And Carrie just stepped right up and just took over for him and guided us through that class masterfully until Sam could come back. I'll never forget sitting at the conference and on the WebEx call, sitting right next to Carrie Dudenhofer, and Sam comes in on a WebEx from his hospital bed, because that's just the kind of guy Sam is. And, there may be some onion chopping ninjas at that table that day, because it was just amazing, unbelievable. Stephanie, talk to us about the cohort, and you come out for the in-person and do a phenomenal job, in my opinion, teaching. It isn't just about instruction. There's other aspects to it that you guys teach. You and Neil each teach a class. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. To expand on what John was mentioning earlier, this is something that's been in the works for years, really. We've spent hours offline dreaming about this, what we wanted it to be, talking about it. It really was our baby. And we really wanted our baby well cared for. And like John said, we all wanted to do it. We thought, this is our baby. We know exactly how we want to do it. We need to do it. And obviously that was not going to happen. We just didn't have the time to do it. And then along comes Samuel Middlebrook, who is, I feel like we came up with this is the framework. This is what we want to do. And then Samuel breathed like a soul and a heart into this, brought our baby to life. It's a real boy now, or something. I don't know.
Right. Really true.
So, and like what John said, it was difficult to kind of let go a little bit at first and give over, not control. That's really not a good word for but that's the one that's coming to my mind. Just kind of open your hands and say, run with it.
Custody.
Especially for, Yeah, in the custody of my child. Yeah. And Samuel has done it beautifully. And like you said, Carrie coming alongside him, she stepped up in an incredible way while Samuel was ill. I could not have imagined someone doing it better. Her dedication to I think she would be nearly as dedicated to our baby as we are. And she wanted to do it in the most respectful way to Samuel and trying to not only do the job, but keep us all in the loop and try to keep students well informed at a time that was really up in the air. I can't count the times I just sat back and went, wow, I am just so blessed by the team that I'm surrounded with. I cannot believe the caliber of people that we get to work with and share space with. And then the in-person weekend of that, of course, is it happens kind of early in the process, and we found that really kind of helps build relationships better, faster. And so to get to meet these people that have known each other for a couple of weeks and then come and share some space together, and we do a little bit of shooting, but frankly, they've already proven that they know how to shoot. We've already seen them shoot. It's not that difficult to shoot. It's not that difficult to teach people how to shoot. It's teaching adults and connecting with adults and sharing this really important knowledge. So we get to do more of that. We get to delve into what's holding them back from being the people that they can be themselves, the teachers that they can be. How can they better connect with students by better connecting with themselves and understanding who they are? One of my favorite pieces that I get to usually talk about when I'm there is dealing with like trauma, people showing up, someone like me, you did a whole podcast on how many women that you talked about that got into the self-defense industry from a place of trauma. And that's something that I'm not sure everyone is as sensitive to as they could be, particularly if they don't understand power dynamics and things like that. So the chance to really spend 3 days with the type of people that enroll in this program, it's fantastic. It is, again, just a highlight of the year.
You just discussed the caliber of people at Active Self-Protection. And I think right around May of this year, that caliber went up exponentially when you hired Mike Williver to run the Active Self-Protection. John's laughing.
Could not agree more. I don't know how many times I sit back and go, wow, we have Mike Williver.
The Mike Williver. Just to be clear.
Mike Williver.
I got a call. John and I talked about a podcast, I don't know, a year and a half ago. We just kind of kicked the idea around. And then I got a call from him, I think in May, right before I retired, saying, yeah, I talked to Stephanie about it. Let's do this thing. And it was a lot of like, okay, what are we going to talk about? We didn't really have a solid idea. And then we finally settled on, hey, let's just tell the stories of the people. Sometimes people were on the channel, other people that have been in self-defense encounters. And we all said, that's a great idea. And we've been doing it now. This episode that we're making right now will be episode 19, I believe. And I don't mind saying it again. For a new show, this thing is absolutely killing it. In the top 1.5% of all podcasts globally. When I saw that number, I was like, that can't be right.
In 18 episodes, bro.
Yeah. I mean, as I told, I was on another show recently, as I told this other show, I said, it doesn't hurt that I have a YouTube channel with 2.5 million subscribers who are being told once a week at least to go check out the podcast. That certainly helps. But as you guys said, if the quality wasn't there, people wouldn't keep tuning in. If the show sucked, they wouldn't keep coming back just because it's affiliated with ASP.
I would say that it doesn't, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't suck that you have the YouTube channel. It goes over there. But I think people vastly overestimate the amount of influence that has. If people didn't want to be there and didn't want to hear the stories, we started a second YouTube channel after having a significant YouTube channel, and we had to grind that second one out. We had that thought that, well, we have this big following, they'll just filter over into this second channel. And that absolutely did not happen in any sort of a way that, it wasn't at all like what we expected. And the content is all really super differentiated. Like the main channel on YouTube is one type of content. The second channel is another type of content. The podcast is a totally third different type of content. There are a certain segment and percentage of people that are probably consuming all of that content. But I would say for the most part, the vast majority of the audiences are not overlapping.
Yeah, John had once said, there's a certain number of people who watch the main channel. They just like the cool, violent aspect of the videos. And then there's a certain group of people that actually want, probably most people want to actually learn a lesson. How do I not let that happen to me, or how do I have that successful outcome? John, you were our first guest on the podcast. And that, by the way, up until today, probably that was the easiest editing I've ever done, because John talks for a living. And so there wasn't a lot of and to filter out. So thank you for that, sir.
I've been editing my own videos on Active Self-Protection Extra for a little while now. We've had some staff transitions, so I've been editing them. And so I found all of my annoying verbal tics, and I've been trying so hard to get rid of them.
Yeah, you pointed some out to me as we're doing the badge cams. When you cut to me and I say, yeah, every time, yeah. And it drives me nuts now. And I hear myself doing it. And as I edit my own audio, the same thing comes up where I'm like, okay, I see what these things are. And then I'll be sitting there doing a video with you, and I'll be like, don't say yeah, don't say yeah, don't say yeah. And you cut to me and I'm like, yeah. It absolutely never fails. John, have you been able to listen to the podcast, and what are your thoughts on it?
It's incredible. I love it. Of course I listen to it. I work from home. So when I'm listening to it, a lot of times it's kind of, the background stuff. But I always want to hear the stories. I want to hear what's going on with that. And I consider Stephen Gutowski to be a friend, and your guys' conversation's always fascinating to me. Always good stuff. I think, quite frankly, my favorite episode so far personally was the episode with Stephen Wilford. That episode was so powerful. I don't know that I've ever seen a better example of, those are my people and I have to protect them. And I may not go to that church with them, but those are my people. And that just reminded me of Jesus so much. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down his life for his friends. So I think that every single one seems like just powerful witnesses of what good people protecting their flock can do.
I really enjoyed doing it. And I got to say, earlier this week, I put out just a quick 2-minute episode of the show, just announcing this show and saying that, I'm really proud of what we're doing. And I always refer to us in the we, not the I, because there's so many people that for every aspect of active self-protection, there's 12 people behind the scenes doing something in some way to make it happen and to bring it to fruition. But I think we're doing something really unique, and I think we're doing something really important. And the reviews people are leaving speak to that. They're like, this is a good show, and here's why. Usually, it has something to do with, if you want to know what actually happens, not the the TV version where the guy blows away the bad guy and blows the smoke off of his barrel and goes home and high fives the wife and they have a pizza and celebrate. That's not reality. And time after time, and guest after guest have borne that out, that nobody goes through an incident like that unscathed and everything's just fine in the way it was. There's the legal implications, the moral implications, the PTSD, all of that is really something that I think people are learning from. So I'm super stoked, and I want to thank you guys for trusting me to get that moving.
I'll be real. So it's because we have the success on the channels, on the YouTube channels, that we can do this kind of stuff. I don't think people recognize, to do this right, how much this stuff costs, and how much, not just money, but time and expertise and ability to do that, and to be patient. Just like, quite frankly, the instructor certification is not a money neutral thing. It's not a money maker for me. The podcast, we started it with the idea that says, no, we're going to invest in this, because I think that it has the potential to be transformative in not only the self-defense world, but in the discussion of self-defense in our society. So it's worth investing in, because it's helping good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people to make good decisions for their family. And you're the hub around which that turns, Mike. I love what you've done with it, and your interviewing skill, interviewing, interrogating, potato, is excellent.
It's very different. I didn't interview a lot of victims in my law enforcement career. I just didn't. I was a Fed for most of it. So generally speaking, my crimes were, dope or gangs or whatever. And if there was a victim to be interviewed, I was on a task force. It was a local agent, officer, deputy, whatever, that took care of that. And I was usually dealing with the crooks. That said, there is an art to getting someone into a room, reading them a piece of paper that says, you really shouldn't talk to me. It's a bad idea. You should talk to an attorney first. and then convincing them that talking to you and telling you all the bad things they did is a good idea. And if you can do that, I think you can talk to just about anybody. Gutowski is a kick in the pants. I absolutely love that guy. I talked to him today. He's an Eagles fan. I'm a Washington football team fan, but we love each other anyway. Our teams are playing this week, so by the time this show comes out, we will know who is the slightly less sucky team in the NFC East.
Do you guys place a bet on that noise? Or are you guys gonna
No, we're both kind of closet fans because our teams both suck this year, as they have for the last. I mean, my team sucked for 25 years. That's neither here nor there. No, we don't. We just call each other to either gloat or weep. One of the two. It's like gloating or weeping.
Right.
So, John, tell us what would you like to see in 2022? Is there an area of growth or a thing you want to do that hasn't been done? And then I'll ask Stephanie that same question.
Boy, tough one to think through. Honestly, 2021 has been one of the hardest years of my life. We don't share that on the channels all that much, but it has been a struggle. Some real joys too. And don't get me wrong, I'm super grateful for where we are, but boy, it feels like, I know people have said 2020 was hard. Man, I feel like 2021 was its bigger brother on steroids. So, gosh, we want to do, if I put out there in the public, I want to get 3 cohorts done in the active self-protection instructor certification. That'll require the second one to fill before we even think about a third. And Stephanie is looking on and smirking and saying, Korea, I swear to God, I'll kill you. I would like to do that. I would like to see the national conference grow. We bumped up right at raising $100,000 for the Flint Hills Foster Teen Camp. I said this earlier, my goal, I don't know that we'll hit it in 2022, but the only way to do is to set it is to double that and to raise a couple $100,000 for them. That's incredibly important ministry. And they do that work for those kids literally with no support from anyone. The state doesn't pay those kids to come to camp. Certainly the foster families don't pay for those kids to come to camp. Mike and Lisa Irvin pay for that out of their own pocket. And so instead to go, no, we're going to provide for that. You do the work and we'll provide the money is important. I mean, we're going to keep the channels where they are. I think that we're doing great work with that. I just got certified this year as a Arizona Post certified specialist instructor. And so I'll probably expand into doing a little bit more law enforcement live fire training here in the state of Arizona. Not that I need to do a ton of that, but do some work with cops on their off-duty carry. That's going to be something that's there. And I know Neil and I are pushing into doing a little bit more long gun teaching. We're doing shotgun to start the year here. Carbine in March, first weekend in March. He and I are doing that. Class is already full, both those classes. Actually, I think there might be a couple spots left in the shotgun class. But so more of the same, better of the same, and even more. I'm just looking forward to that. The biggest thing I want to do, quite frankly, this year is I want to not fly commercial this year. A lot of people, if you're on my friends list, you know this, but if you're not, just following ASP, don't know. But I got my private pilot's license in 2021. Started on Christmas Eve 2020, and then finished it up in April. And I'm in the process of purchasing a general aviation aircraft. It feels like it's been crawling over broken glass to get it closed and all those things. But to be able to go to classes on my own schedule and not have to get to second base with a random stranger at the security line and sit in a sewer tube full of strangers who might have random diseases and make connections in airports that look like they are, the middle of Mogadishu sometimes. But just to be able to roll up, throw my bags in, do a pre-flight and rock and roll is my heart's desire. So that's what I want to do this year. I also have a couple of other goals. I want to get some more incredible people. Active Self-Protection Extra is already starting to be a community effort. And you see my face on there some, but you see Neil on there. You see Stephanie on there. You see Terry Johnson on there quite regularly. You see some others too that are there on a kind of a guest basis. Mike, you're on the big channel with me. Stephanie is on the big channel with me. I'd like to see that increase even a little bit more. Not that I want to get away from the producing the content, but I see one of my missions in life is to help the best people to be known and to have their voice heard to help our world be better. So more and more of that. Brian Hale, of course, is on the second channel on Extra every week too. So helping those folks to have a bigger voice is my goal.
You know, I remember after one of the first videos I did with you, there was a rather hilarious comment where somebody said, "Listen, John, if this is you introducing us to the stepdad, we're not here for it." And I think people thought you were trying to hand over the Badge Cam channel to me, and I had to assure them immediately that was not the case. You know, I just got to say this whole discussion, if you put it in perspective of what this company's about, all these things don't make a lot of sense on paper. The national conference doesn't make any sense on paper. The instructor cohort doesn't make any sense on paper. I sat there after we finished dinner and you said, "Hey, if anybody doesn't want to stick around for this worship portion, you guys can take off. No big deal. There's no obligation to stay for it if you're not a follower of Jesus." I don't think anybody left, you know, and these people weren't necessarily Christians, didn't follow Jesus. But when you put Jesus in the middle of stuff, and you stick to your principles, things just seem to work out somehow. They always seem to work out somehow. And that's what I see you and everyone else at Active Self-Protection doing, is trying to put and keep Jesus in the middle of everything, and things will work together for those of us who love God. Stephanie, what do you want to see moving forward?
Well, to piggyback on that, I have to echo also what John was saying. It's almost difficult to come up with like goals and plans, because what God has done over the last couple of years has been so far above and beyond what I could have imagined that it almost feels limiting to come up with like, I would like to do this. And on the other hand, we've also had this tiger by the tail for years. This company and the way that we've interacted and interfaced with the world has changed. Almost every quarter, we're a different company sometimes doing things in like what it looks like, not a different, you know, we don't have a different mission, we don't have different groups of people, but the way that we're interacting and the size and the scope has changed so much that we couldn't have imagined this. One of my greatest joys is to be able to work so closely with both John and Neil, because they have a lot of vision and gifts that I don't necessarily have. And you can probably see some of that as you're talking to both of us now. John has the idea of, let's do this, let's double that, let's do, you know, let's go. How many cohorts can we do? And he has this great vision of where he'd like to go. And he's done really well seeing that and seeing where he wants to
ready,
go.
fire, aim.
Yes. So then I'm the aiming mechanism. Unfortunately, sometimes I'm brought in third.
Yeah.
No, and Neil's the same way. They have fantastic ideas, huge heart, let's do this. And I'm the one that doesn't necessarily like change. I'm the one that's worried about the details. I'm the one that it's working great right now. Why would we want to add these things? So in some ways, I'm a good counterbalance to what they're doing. On the other hand, if I was running it alone, we would never do anything or never change anything, because it would never be done enough or perfect enough to ever launch. So to be able to work with people that we see things and plan things so radically differently, and yet embrace that in the other person so that we can move forward and do something pretty cool is fantastic. So that is part of it. It's very difficult to say, you know, what I would like to do. I have loved this last year in particular. We have grown the faces of active self-protection, for lack of a better word, what the public is seeing, which, you know, in some ways is kind of comical to me, talking about, you know, me coming in as CEO and forcing myself onto the channel or whatever, which is hilarious to me, because I've been around in the company longer than there's been a YouTube channel, you know. Anything you've seen from ASP has had my fingers in it in some way from forever. And so, you know, that part is funny to me. The people that we've had behind the scenes, the core in this team that we have, we're now having a chance to kind of start bringing them out. And for me, the people that we showcase to the community and to our audience is, I need to trust them. I need to know that they're going to be giving the best information with the heart behind it. Mike, you on the podcast, we've been getting these stories from people for, you know, ever since there's been active self-protection. We get the messages, hey, this happened to me. I heard your voice while I was going through a defensive encounter. I listened to what you said and I did it. And I thought, hey, if you're hearing our voice and our directions, for lack of a better word, when someone has a gun pointed at you, we need to do this right. We need to be making sure that our voices are correct. What we're teaching is correct. The best of what we know really drives me to give the best information in the best way that I know how to help people, and that has to go beyond me. So when we asked you to do the podcast, it wasn't just because you're really good at interacting with people, or really good at reading people, or really good at telling stories, or really good at learning how to edit and put on a podcast, but also because my heart trusts your heart to tell these stories and to tell them in the right way. And that's hugely important to me. My heart trusts Samuel and Carrie running around with the other babies. We've got all these babies now everywhere, so many babies. And I need to know that the people are taking care of them. I can trust what they're going to do with them and how they're going to present that to the world. So that is kind of where I look at my role, and just continuing that role is the caretaking of this precious thing to me, and making sure that it's well cared for and presented to the world in the best way possible.
You know, the old phrase, be kind to everyone because you have no idea what they're going through, has never been more real to me. And I know you guys have all sorts of stuff behind the scenes that nobody watching a video would ever know about. And you've handled it with such grace, especially this past year has been really, really hard. And I'm super proud of you guys. I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this show and trusting me with it. And I just love working here, and I'm super excited to see what God has in store for 2022 and beyond that. So John, I want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm grateful every day. It's funny. I had lunch today with my incredible wife, Laura. And while we were sitting having lunch, she looked at me and she said, "Do you still love what you do?" And these are the kind of talks you have when it's like real time. You know what I mean? We're sitting having lunch, and it's been tough. She just had a death in the family. And so, you're talking about real things. And she said, "Do you still love what you do?" And I said, "Man, I feel like I'm made for this. I love it. I love doing my daily work. I wish that I could electroshock idiot commenters through the internet some days, but that would be awesome. If Taser would make a product to send barbs through the internet to get people in the meaty bits, if they make evil comments online, I would pay for it. But I love what I do. And I think that we make a difference, and we're changing not just firearms training. We're not just changing the way that people think about self-defense from Hollywood to real life, but I actually think we're starting to have an impact on our broader culture in terms of the discussion of self-preservation and human value, and doing that in a way that I don't see anybody else doing. So my pleasure, man. Thank you for being on the team. I think that we have a corporate culture that is I've never seen before, and that's because of you guys. Slap and tickle is not just a motto; it's a way of life and active self-protection. And we sure have a good time, and we get to draw heartfelt, value-added people around us, and that's just, it boggles my mind every day that I get to work with the people that I do, and that I tell Stephanie would agree with me on this. I'm pretty well feral at this point. I'm ungovernable and unemployable. So I hope this works out, because if I had to have a job, I think everybody'd be in trouble.
But it's chaotic good, so we'll allow it. Stephanie, any last thoughts?
My last thoughts really just echo what John says. I look around at this team and what we're doing, and I mean, these people are more than my coworkers. They're more than just people I do something with. I feel like that we're a family, and that sounds a little culty, and maybe it is. I don't know. No, it's really it's chosen family, and it's not that I've chosen a different family than not that I had a bad family or anything like that, but to be able to work with people that I love as my family, and to be doing almost what feels like a mission, like something very important, and changing people's lives, changing the culture, helping good people protect themselves. And part of that is convincing them that they are important and valuable and worthy of that, of being fiercely protected and defended. That's not a message that everyone has gotten. And the blessing of being able to share that with people that don't hear that on a regular basis and are even having trouble considering it, That's huge to me. So, like John says, I feel like in so many ways this is not something I could have ever seen happening 20 years ago. The idea that I would be doing what I do now with the people that I do it with, it's so far beyond what I could have even imagined. And yet, on the other hand, I feel like it's something that I was made to do with the people that I'm doing it with. And there's not a day goes by that I don't laugh until tears are coming out of my eyes, interacting with my coworkers, my family, my friends, and that I'm not grateful for the work that we get to do, and that I'm not proud of what we put out there and how it helps people. It's a pretty incredible thing, and I'm just really grateful for it.
It's a great place to end. I love you guys. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'll see you both soon.
Merry Christmas. I love you too, bro.
All right, folks, you know what time it is. It's time for the Gutowski Files. Joining us again this week, the founder of TheReload.com and the host of the second best podcast on the internet, the Weekly Reload Podcast, Stephen Gutowski. Stephen, how are you, sir?
Doing good. I feel like people should go and rate this podcast and then go and rate the Weekly Reload Podcast and give us their opinion on which one is actually better. That we have a competition.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let's do it. So if you're listening to this and you're rating either or both of our podcasts, just throw in there on the review, hey, this is part of the Reload ASP podcast challenge we're doing here, and we're somebody's getting 4 stars and somebody's getting 5. We'll see how that works out. That's a great idea. So this week we are going to discuss a pretty significant multi-year deal between SIG, the gun manufacturer, and the Second Amendment Foundation. And there's an article up on TheReload.com, authored by Stephen Gutowski. SIG gives big Second Amendment SIG gives big. Not alliteration. What do you call that? Just rhyming. To the Second Amendment Foundation in multi-year deal. And this is pretty significant amount of money. And I think this is going to be the SAF's biggest deal yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's their first major deal like this over multiple years with a firearms manufacturer, especially one the size of Sig Sauer.
You have your finger on the pulse of the NRA. Is SIG donating these kind of numbers to the NRA? Is this signaling some sort of shift, do you think? Or am I getting ahead of myself?
Well, certainly the NRA tends to get a lot of big donations from the industry, although most of their money tends to come from, smaller donations. They got 5 million dues paying members. However, they haven't been growing, and obviously they've been experiencing quite a lot of turmoil over the last 2 years, including, a lot of corruption allegations against their leader, Wayne LaPierre, which we've discussed, a number of times in the past in the show.
Indeed.
And so SIG hasn't said anything about this being related to what's going on at the NRA, but I feel like anyone who's been paying attention to the gun rights advocacy scene over the last 2 years could draw their own conclusions about why this is happening now.
This is the biggest deal that the Second Amendment Foundation has had thus far. It's a multi-year deal. So what exactly is SIG just giving them money? Or the Second Amendment Foundation is not going to be advertising for SIG, I take it?
No, and it's unusual for them to have a multiple year commitment like this up front. That's not usually how SAF gets donations, or most places get donations. So that kind of commitment is pretty significant. And in addition to the money that they're going to be giving to the Second Amendment Foundation, they're also going to be helping promote them on SIG's social media. So they're going to try and help grow the organization, it sounds like, from an institutional standpoint. So that's pretty significant as well. Second Amendment Foundation is a group that's been around for a long time. They've been doing a lot of high-level legal work. That's kind of where they focus their efforts, is on big court cases. They were involved in McDonald v. Chicago, which was the last big Supreme Court case that incorporated the Second Amendment protections in Heller to the states, right, by striking down Chicago's handgun ban. And they've been involved in a lot of significant Second Amendment litigation like that over the years. And so they're a pretty significant player in the group, but they are still relatively small. They did about $5 million in revenue last year, according to their 990. And they've been somewhere between 4 and 5 million over the last several years, whereas the NRA, for instance, is much larger, almost really almost 100 times larger in some years, because the NRA is spread across several groups. They have like 7 entities, from their, nonprofits, their 501c3s, which are like charity nonprofits that can't do political work, to their PACs, which are political action committees, and they have a super PAC, and they have the 501c4, which is the membership organization. Anyway, they can reach up into the $400 million range. So this is one reason why what's happening with the NRA is so important, because they are so much larger than every other gun rights group out there. But it is interesting to see the industry gravitate towards a group like Second Amendment Foundation right now, as the NRA is struggling.
Yeah, you cite in the article, the NRA remains the dominant financial force in the gun rights movement. Its combined groups brought in nearly $340 million in 2020, while the SAF brought in about $5 million. That's a huge difference, and we've talked about this a number of times. But if the NRA doesn't get its act together soon, like really soon, and people start to lose faith and start to not send them money and not renew their memberships, we've got a problem, because they still are the 800-pound gorilla. And as nice as it is to see someone like Second Amendment Foundation get a huge deal with SIG, if the NRA goes away in the next few years, these disparate groups they're not going to be able to gel together to replace the NRA anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's a good bottom line here when it comes to talking about the NRA, regardless of what you think as far as their leadership goes and whether Wayne LaPierre should stay in charge and so forth. Obviously, there's a lot of contention around that, but there's no debating the fact that they are by far the most powerful and largest gun group. Generally, they're much bigger than the gun control groups too at this point. So what happens with them is very important. But what happens with groups like the Second Amendment Foundation or Firearms Policy Coalition or Gun Owners of America is important as well, because those groups can be very effective, as you've seen with some of these legal cases that Second Amendment Foundation has won over the years. So the NRA is the biggest, but they're not the only, right?
Fair enough. I think that's a good way to put it. Folks, as I said before, please go over to the Weekly Reload and buy yourself a membership. Buy a loved one a membership. This is a time of year around the holidays when people tend to kind of they quit paying attention to the news. They just want to focus on buying presents and drinking hot cocoa, and that's all well and good. But we here at the ASP Podcast and our friends at the Weekly Reload are staying on top of these things, so that the politicians don't think they can get away with something when no one's paying attention. So now is as important a time as ever. Go get yourself a membership. Go gift one to a loved one. The gift of good, sane, sober reporting on the goings-on in the Second Amendment world, and legally and otherwise. Stephen, thank you so much for being here, and happy holidays to you, my friend.
Hey, happy holidays to you too. You're absolutely right. We're 100% reader funded, so that's the only way we keep doing this kind of reporting. People buy.
Yeah, and if you don't get a membership, he's gonna go ahead and get a sponsorship from 1-800-CARS for Kids, and you'll have to listen to that jingle just kidding. He would never do that to you, folks. Again, Stephen, buddy, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next week.
Hey, thank you.